Today we speak with the one and only Dr. Rajan Sankaran. I don't even know how to describe how incredible it was to speak with him. It was an absolute dream come true. He is such a guru and such a master of homeopathy, and yet such an incredible, down-to-earth, approachable and lovely man at the same time. So this has been a very surreal experience for me, and I know that you're going to absolutely love this podcast. We cover quite a few things. One of it is his new book, Manjhi the Boatman, and I'll put the link in the podcast. I urge all of you listening to hop onto Amazon, type it in and get it on Kindle and read it straight away, or purchase the hard copy if you prefer, but read it. It is so incredibly good. I've just found out about the book a couple of days before the podcast and downloaded it straight away and read it all in one sitting. It was around midnight when I finished and I couldn't put it down. It was so incredibly good. I don't even know how you would describe the book. I would say it's kind of like a spiritual handbook, I guess. It's meaning of life, existential type. If that's your vibe, this book will totally resonate with you. Just to read a little bit of an excerpt from the book for you. This is on page 183 of the book. Truth cannot be this simple, I thought to myself. That there are libraries full of scripture must mean that truth is more complicated than this. Monks spend entire lifetimes trying to reach there. Surely it cannot be that close. I asked him, what happens when one awakens to the truth? He replied, what is truth? The best way to define truth is, it is. The way to live the truth is to be who you are, to be aware of what you experience from moment to moment. When you have that awareness, you distance yourself from the experience and become the space where all experiences play out. What changes for you if you do that? I asked, wanting to know what I was going to get from this knowledge. He explained, on the outside, things will look the same. You will still go through highs and lows. You will still experience fear, anger, and emotions. You will still get agitated. The only difference is that you will know that at the deepest level, none of this is you. That while you live this life as an individual and play your role, you are not really that identity. You are presence itself. It is as if you are an actor playing your part to perfection while knowing that you are not the character you are playing. Will this realization solve all the problems that our mind and body go through as well? If I realize that I am not the mind or the body, can I stop paying attention to them and just be as a spirit? I asked. In the absolute sense, we are all the spirit. However, we have to also accept that in the relative sense, the body and mind are also real. So that will just give you a tiny little taster of this incredible book, Manjhi the Boatman. I think you will really like it. Rajan also speaks in this episode about another book that he has got out called From Shadow to Light. And this is about his work on whys. And he will be going into that as well. Also check out sampurnamhealing.com and check out his Raga Therapy app. And he's also got some meditation videos. So this will all be in the show notes. And yeah, have a listen. Some people have asked me in the past, by the way, I hear you talk about show notes. Where are they? If you click on the actual episode, wherever you are listening to this podcast, it will expand and give you more details about that episode itself. And if you really have trouble finding it, just send me an email, info@eugeniekruger.com. I also want to ask you a really big favor. If you are in any way able to support this podcast, please visit buymeacoffee.com/hangout. This podcast really does take me a lot of work, and I am now paying an editor because I don't have the time to edit this podcast myself. So the payment for the editor is coming out of my own pocket. It really would mean the world to me if you're able to make a one-off donation to this podcast just to help me pay the editor to edit an episode, and also the social media and everything else that goes along with creating something like this. Truly, it would mean so much to me. And if you want to become a patron of the show, and that will be a monthly donation of $5 a month, you're welcome to do that as well. That's also in the show notes. But yeah, if you're able to help me out, I would really appreciate that. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/hangout. Enjoy this very special episode.
Welcome to the Homeopathy Hangout, where we discuss all things homeopathy from around the world. And now my mum and your host, Eugenie Kruger.
Hello, homies, and a very warm welcome to Homeopathy Hangout. Today, we get to speak with the one and only Dr. Rajan Sankaran. It is such a huge privilege to have you here. Thank you so much for your time and welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah.
I wonder, can we just hop straight into your new book? And you were just asking me if I've read it. And Kashiti, who is on your team, she emailed me Monday night, today's Friday, and she said, Dr. Rajan has another new book. And I'm like, what? Another book? And it was about 8:00 at night. And I went straight on to Amazon and I downloaded it on Kindle and I read it in one sitting. It was about midnight when I finished, but I couldn't put it down. It is so good. Do you maybe want to tell our listeners a little bit about this book? It's called Manjhi the Boatman. And I think Manjhi means boatman in Hindi, right?
Yes, right.
Yeah. Do you, I mean, I could tell my version of the book, but maybe do you want to tell our listeners?
Well, I would like to hear your version.
Hear my version. Well, firstly, I love that you dedicated to Misha, and I love his photo on the front there, and I love that he's on that little wooden boat on the river, and I could feel him smiling on you with this incredible book that you've written. And if I had to sum it up, I would say it's kind of like a spiritual guidebook almost. And there's actually another homeopath that gave me a book as a gift a while ago. It is called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. Your book kind of made me feel a little bit like that it's just this incredible spiritual lessons that somehow felt like it was completely new, but at the same time, my soul felt that it resonated with it. And this is something that I know within myself, but didn't know that I know. So you've got all these beautiful, beautiful lessons in there. And maybe I could just quote one of the lessons for our listeners, because I think anyone that knows your works, I thought this was a homeopathic book. So when I started reading it, I was really flabbergasted that it was just, I mean, there's homeopathic principles in there in a way, but it's just, about awareness and consciousness. One of the quotes I really love is, you wrote, the real guru is the one sitting within you. It is the deepest wisdom in your being. It is not even you. It is the higher consciousness that dwells in you. And when the mind is out of the way, the pure being shines in you as the guru. And I really love that, because we all have that in us, but it just need to kind of be reminded of that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And the other part I really loved is when you said about rolling down the grassy hills with Genshin Lama, because in your eulogy to Misha Norland, you said in there about Misha telling you, come on, let's roll down the grassy hill. So I kind of felt like maybe there was a little bit of Misha coming in there in the book as well.
Yeah. So Misha has been a friend for the last 30, 40 years or something like that. And we had been very, very close. And in fact, the picture which I put on the book is something that I clicked when we were on a trip to Kerala in South India. And we had many journeys together, both geographically and spiritually. And in a sense, he was also one of the boatmen in my life. So that's the reason I dedicated the book to him. And in fact, when I was writing the book, chapter by chapter, I would send it to him by email. And he would review them and send it back to me and give his suggestions and thoughts. So he's very much a part of the book. And you will be surprised that when I completed the book and I wrote the final chapter and the whole thing was in one piece, and I sent it to him, I said, Misha, this is the whole book in one piece. And I never got a reply because that's the day he died.
Wow.
So it's an interesting, as if this was the last task that he had to kind of fulfill to help me write that book.
And I know Misha also has a very good sense of humor. I never got to meet him in person, unfortunately, but his son Luke is a big inspiration, a big help to me. And I think Misha would have loved the ending of your book. I laughed so hard at the ending of your book, and I was like turning the pages, like there's got to be more. But my husband said, "Why are you laughing so loud?" It's like the middle of the night, and I was like, "Oh, this was the best ending of a book ever." And I'm going to leave it there for the audience just to tease them because they're going to have to get the book and read it. It was so funny. I laughed my head off. I was
Right,
not. I was not expecting that.
right.
Oh no,
Yeah.
that was beautiful.
So, there are, in fact, two ways to look at the world and two ways to, in fact, to live. And one way is the way of intellect and thought and logic and reason and how it should be and what we should be doing and thinking and feeling, etc.
Mm.
And the other way is to let be what there is, and be that what you are, not what you should be or what you should be thinking or reasoning, etc. So the other way is to live your truth, to walk to your own drummer.
Mm.
And and this way it's not logical, it's not reasonable, but it's how it is. In India, we say that a spiritually enlightened being, how can you recognize him? And somebody says, you will see him either behaving like a child or like a madman.
That's very interesting. And I,
Ramate balaha unmattava devaha in Sanskrit, like a child or like a madman. And what's the commonality between a child and a madman? That they live according to their own instinct in some sense. They are not listening to socially approved and, things that come from memory and things that come from certain, definitions, etc., etc. They just are who they are. They can go in the water and they can jump up and down and, mess their clothes and be so happy about it. And it's that quality of living, of being, and also being aware. And being aware of what? Not being aware of what is reasonable or what, planning and, uh, going by your concepts and your, fixed ideas, etc. But being aware of what's going on inside of you.
mm,
And what is going on inside of you is not in your control even. It is what it is. So there are thoughts and emotions and experiences and sensations, and all of this is it's like a river that is flowing inside you, coming and going, constant.
mm,
And can you stand on the bank of the river and just watch what comes and goes? And if you can do that, then what happens is that a distance develops between your thought and you. You become the observer, your mind becomes the object of observation. And when that happens, then you find yourself in a much more equanimous space than you are flowing with the river and in the storm and all of that. There's a poem called If, and it begins with, if you can dream and not let dreams be your master, if you can think and not let thoughts be your aim, then yours is the earth and all that's in it. And what's more, you'll be a man, my son. This is a poem I remember called If. So, yes, you can think, you can dream, you can plan, you can do everything. But if you can also parallelly take distance from all of that and just be aware at some level, be awareness itself, then life has a completely different quality about it. That you are not being thrown helter-skelter in the confusion of thoughts and feelings and emotions and anxieties and fears and up and down with pleasure and pain. And you are that. No, you are not that. You're not that alone. You are also the observer of all of this. And you are also at the same time the space in which both the experience and the observer exist. You are just the being itself, not even this identity that you have assumed, but in fact, a much, much, much larger, unlimited, timeless space of pure awareness, beingness, of presence. And that you are. That's what you are. So, awareness is the key word in all of this. And that's where actually one relates to homeopathy. Because in homeopathy also, the key word is let everything be as it is and be aware of it. So when the homeopath asks you, for example, what your problem, you say, I have a headache. He doesn't say to you, why do you have a headache? For what reason? Do you have a tumor? Do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have that? Or can I label it as migraine? Can I label it as tension headache? No, he doesn't do any labeling. He just says, describe your headache. Turn your eyes inward and start to become aware of the quality of your headache, the sensation, the experience, the emotion of your headache, and describe that to me. And that's it. That's the homeopathic case taking, is kind of asking you to be more and more aware of what's going on. That's it. And from that awareness, we find something that matches that experience, in terms of a remedy. So, and the remedy is also awareness, because the way we bring a remedy to life is to let a healthy volunteer take it and become aware of the experience that that remedy produces in him. So, in fact, awareness is the operational word in homeopathy. So, as I told you, there are two ways of being or living or thinking. One is to think what is and what should be and what is reasonable and what is logical. And the other way is to experience and to be aware of the experience and not have to label it or, give a reason to it or explain it or interpret it or classify it. Just be with it. Be with it. And be with it with your full awareness. And in fact, that awareness itself has a deeply healing quality, which homeopathy taps into. So the homeopathic remedy, in fact, is a mirror of what's going on inside you. So when you go to a homeopath and you say, I'm sleepless, my mind is too active, I cannot stop it. And the whole night, there are thoughts and activities and all of that going on. I cannot stop, I cannot sleep. Give me a remedy. So the homeopath may prescribe him the remedy coffea, which is made out of coffee, because that's what coffee does. It produces this kind of stimulation of the mind that doesn't let you sleep. That's why people take coffee sometimes, so that they get stimulated, they have to study or they have to do something else or drive a car.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. And so coffea basically mirrors. When you give the remedy coffea to this man whose problem is sleeplessness, his inner state is mirrored by the remedy. And when you see a mirror, what happens to you is you become aware, you see. A mirror is awareness, in fact. So it's the awareness that heals, either through a remedy. And in fact, that principle of healing through awareness or healing through mirroring is not limited to the homeopathic treatment alone or through the pills or through the homeopathic dosage or something like that. It's a principle that is applied unconsciously also in many, many areas of life. When you look around, how do we heal, without, if forget homeopathy as a system, even if it doesn't exist, how do we heal? We heal through the homeopathic principle unconsciously. And that's really what, is worth looking at, because then you understand this principle of mirroring and awareness as the key to healing. There is a story which is told often in India, especially, that one woman, her child died, a young boy, he died. And this was the time of the Buddha. And she took the dead body of her young son and placed that body at the feet of the Buddha. And he said, you have to bring him to life. You are divinity. You can do it. And Buddha tried to convince her that it's not possible, but she was not, listening to him. And finally, the Buddha yielded and he said, yes, I am going to bring him back to life, but on a single condition, that you bring me a grain of rice from the house of someone who has had no grief. So the woman left the body there and she went from house to house saying, have you had any grief? And the people in the house would make her sit down and they would tell the story of their grief, who they lost and what happened to them, etc. Then she went to the second house and the third house. And by the time she went to the fourth house, the desire to bring her son back to life had disappeared. And she went to the Buddha and she said, I am now aware that grief is a part of life and I accept it. So Buddha, in fact, was practicing homeopathy without knowing it, isn't it? He was mirroring for her own grief. He knew that when she would ask people, they would tell her stories which mirrored her own state. So that's how we console people. When we go to somebody in grief, we don't tell them jokes, Oh, let me tell you, two men went to a bar, we don't do that. We say to them, I have been through this myself, Yesterday, I had a patient in my clinic and he was a 73-year-old man. And he was very anxious about, certain court cases that were going on about his property, about his land. And in India, unfortunately, court cases take a hell of a lot of time. Now we are talking of 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Sometimes these cases spill over to the next generation also, So this is how the court system works in India. And this man, he was saying, my life is ebbing away and none of my matters are sorted and what's going to happen to my children and all of that. And he became totally depressed and they thought he had Parkinson's disease and whatnot, but he didn't have any of this. I could see that neurologically he was perfect, but it was just this anxiety that was completely bogging him down. So I asked him a question. I said, do you have enough to sustain you for the rest of your life, even if you were to lose all this property? He said, yes, I have enough. My children are well settled. They are all well to do. I said, then suppose I tell you that all this land is gone, okay? Would it make a difference to your daily life? He said, no, it wouldn't make any difference. I am quite okay. I said, then you're wasting your life thinking about that. And then I told him something funny. I said, I'm going through some court cases myself, with the property and all of that. And I said, my case is also dragging on forever. But I don't let that interfere with my life, because for me, I know that even if I would lose that, it wouldn't make a substantial, I wouldn't be on the street, I wouldn't be hungry. So when that's my situation, why am I wasting the rest of my life thinking about that? And I told him a Hindi sentence I said, Gayal ki gati ghayal jane. In Hindi, it means only the wounded knows the pain of the wounded.
Mm.
So I said, I'm also wounded, so I know your pain. And he started laughing. He couldn't sustain himself. And his daughter, who was with him, he's laughing for the first time in
Aw.
3 months. And she took a video of him.
You probably didn't even need to give him a homeopathic remedy. That was probably all he needed.
Yeah, that's what I felt. Even she said, I don't know if he needs a remedy anymore. We've been to 20 doctors, and this is the first time he laughed.
Aw.
So it's just the homeopathic principle. I just mirrored who he was.
And a lot of that is actually, that's your book is about that. And it's kind of almost frustrating at the start of the book because, you have these questions to Genshin Lama and, about, well, if nothing matters, then what's the point? Then why are we striving? Like, even as I was reading it, I was thinking, doing these podcasts, it costs me so much money because I'm now paying an editor because I can't do it all myself. And it takes so much time when I could be in a clinic. I'm like, why am I doing this? Am I doing it for fame? I'm definitely not doing it for fortune because it's actually costing me money. But why am I doing this? Is it all ego? Like, this is actually, through reading this book, I was going through this process with you. Is it ego? Why am I doing? What is driving me? And then these questions that you in Genshin Lama in the caves, and as you go through, is it Rishikesh? How do you pronounce that?
Yes.
As you're going on this journey, I feel like I'm going on this journey with you because I'm like, what is the point of it all? Maybe I just shouldn't do all of this because it's stressing me out. But then I feel like I'm doing this for a bigger reason to, bring homeopathy to the world, to make more people wake up and to make them empowered. And then I'm like, well, why am I doing it if none of this matters anyway? Why should I do it in the first place? And this is why, like, the book was so valuable because I think all of us in areas of our life have gone through exactly what you were going through here, these questions of, why are we doing this to ourselves? Why are we fighting these property battles, which is making us unhappy when none of this really matters at the end of the day? And then I love how the book has so many good, valuable lessons in there. And like you said, it's about that awareness and just being aware about it, watching the river and letting it flow instead of it, bashing you all over the place. Because if you go down this existential path of what's the meaning of life, then sometimes it can feel like never ending. And it comes to the point of, well, what does it all matter? We're all, we're just all spirit and we're all going to die anyway. And so your book was so amazing in that respect that it has such wise, wonderful answers in there. It was actually also very practical as well.
Yeah. The thing is that very often when we examine, we feel that what motivates us to do things is our ego. It seems like that initially, I'm doing it to make money. I'm doing it to become famous. I want to become successful. I want to, whatever. And you feel, oh, maybe this is the reason why I'm doing it. If you look, a little deeper at your own motivation, but when this ego itself dissolves by awareness, again, that's a spiritual awareness, isn't it? That the ego itself, in some sense, is a illusion. And when that what's the ego? Who am I? I often say, 5 minutes after you're dead, you don't even have a name anymore. They call you the body, the body.
Yeah, John Doe.
Even your name has disappeared, So is that what your credit cards are of no use after that, really, you can't take them with you. So what are you doing this for,
Yeah.
So that, by that awareness, this motivation kind of dilutes. I can't say it goes away because still we are there. The ego will be there and it has a purpose and there is no problem with it. But it goes down, this motivation, and then the real motive why you're doing it becomes apparent. And that motive is basically that all things in creation are interdependent and they are co-creating their reality. And they are playing, each one is playing his or her or its role in creation itself, whether it is the sun, the moon, the stars, the mountains, the rivers, the fruits, the trees, the animals. Everyone is playing a role here. And we have to recognize what is our talent, what is our skill set, what potential do we have, and what role are we playing. If we can understand that, then we become equal to an apple tree or a river or a monkey or even a worm or an ant. They're all, and we doing the same. And if we can let go of our ego identity, then we simply merge with our role in creation. And that's a it's you will still do everything you're doing, but with a certain ease and no pressure, and with compassion also, isn't it? Because this role is a compassionate role. It's what you're contributing. The river is contributing, the tree is giving its fruit. Of course, it is taking from the soil its nutrients. It takes and it gives, it takes and it gives. And that's who we are. We take and we give, we take and we give. And nothing is for us anymore, And one day when our time comes, we will smile and disappear.
And I think that's a very important distinction to make, because when you go down that existential path, it's so easy to just think, well, I'm just going to give everything away and go live in the bush, because what's the point of all of this? But what you're saying is, it's kind of keeping it in balance, like you say, giving and taking, and just watching the river flow, and just because it can be really hard when you go down this path of what's the point of it all. It would be so tempting to just go live in the bush. Why don't we all just go live in the bush?
But I think that when you ask, what am I getting from this? Then you see your whole approach is different, because you may not be getting anything from it, or as you perceive it. But when you really ask, who am I and why am I here? Then these questions kind of disappear, because you are, as a part of creation, you are here, and you didn't choose to be here, and you are here like anything else, And that's it. I think then you actually fulfill your role in a much better way, because your mind is not clouded with what am I getting, what am I not getting, what I want, what I don't want. For example, we are doing this little talk together. If I start thinking, this talk perhaps is going to result in huge sales of my book, and people are all going to buy it, and then whatever, it goes on a bestseller list, and this and that and that and that, and then I create all this fantasy in my mind. And then you see, the way I talk to you is going to be very different. I'm going to think, am I talking to fulfill that particular, are my words going in that direction, then I'll say, okay, all those who are watching this show will get a 10% discount on my book and all of that. I go in a totally different direction. But if I think I learned a lot of things in my life from my gurus, my teachers, whoever they are, it could be a dog also. My earlier book was called Dog, Yogi, Banyan Tree.
Yeah.
The book is about, finding teachers in a dog, in a yogi, and in a banyan tree. And what did I learn from them, So it's a kind of semi-autobiographical work, which came about 5-10 years ago. So what I'm saying is that whatever I have learned from these different experiences and teachers in various forms, I have kind of condensed into this book. And I felt that these learnings have helped me in a very significant way. My life is easier. I can't say I'm walking in the clouds right now. I'm human, and I go through all the human trials and tribulations that are normal. But life is easier. and I feel comfortable in my own skin, and I'm ready to disappear, if necessary tonight. I don't feel I have to live another. What if I live? I live. If I don't, it's okay. It's not a big issue. So I felt that calling, in fact, to share these thoughts and these experiences, and especially not only thoughts and experiences, but to facilitate people to go through the same experiences, through these. And that's why I felt. Then I wrote to my friend Laurie, she's a very good friend of mine in Canada. And I wrote to her, Laurie, do you think that it's of any use to write this book? She said to me, Rajan, even if it helps one single person, I think it is worth it.
Well, you have achieved your mission because it has deeply helped me.
Very good. So now I know.
Yeah,
I got it.
it was not in vain. And it was...
You made my day.
Oh,
You made my day.
well, the feeling is mutual because and like you said, it's like we're still humans at the end of the day. And like you said, we can only just strive for pureness, for consciousness. We can always just strive for it. We're never 100% going to be there because there's still going to stub your toe, and you're still going to be maybe offend somebody, or you're still going to do things in your life that's not perfect. But when you have this awareness and you are aware of what's going on, and you have the intention to correct that and kind of be a better person, I don't even know if that's the right word to use, but if you're actually just aware of that, and like you say, watching that river and being aware of that, that's probably what it is at the end of the day. Because I'll tell you what, Rajan, I was very, very nervous about talking to you because you are this incredible, world-renowned authority in homeopathy, and we all in the homeopathic world love you so much. We owe you so much for the works that you have given. So I was trying to think of you've been interviewed probably thousands of times worldwide, and I was thinking, how can I think of some clever questions to ask you that you haven't been asked before? And then as I was reading your book, I was realizing this is all just ego coming in here. And I'm actually going to just follow the advice of your book and actually just let today be. Just let us chat and see what comes up. And I know that there's going to be somebody listening to this podcast that's going to get something from this. It's going to help them in their life. And I know that at the end of the day, that's the real reason why I do this. And that awareness, I hope, is enough to achieve the goal that it needs to achieve.
Yeah, so good to hear, actually. But by the way, your voice is very nice. You've got such a beautiful voice.
Well, I think yours is nice too. And speaking of nice voices, this will be a nice segue for us into the raga. I didn't know you have such a good singing voice.
Yeah. So, these ragas are basically Indian classical music melodies, which each raga is a kind of a pattern of notes. It's in the Western music, it's more linear, you go from A to B. But in Indian classical music, it's more cyclical. So you come back to the same point and you remain within the paradigm or the parameters of a melody. Each melody consists of specific notes that are sung in a specific way, and they're very repetitive also.
I YouTubed you, and there are some beautiful videos of you singing ragas. It's really, really nice. And I had some of them playing in the background while I was working yesterday. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So because I have been studying, classical music since a long time, learning, singing, etc. So I discovered that while there are like thousands of ragas in Indian classical music, there are 40 or 50 which are quite popular, well known. So I discovered that each raga has a specific state of being. It's like it produces in people a certain emotion, a certain experience, a certain energetic pattern, etc. So, and I thought, why not we can use this as a healing tool. And therefore, I did testing of 25 of these ragas on a set of people over the COVID time, because in COVID times, we had nothing better to do, sitting at home. So I got a bunch of people from all over the world, and we used to do that every week. We would do one raga. And that way, we collected data of 25 ragas, and I put that into a kind of an algorithm and created an app which is called the Raga Therapy app. So you can see that on Google Play Store, on Apple Store, with a capital R, that is the symbol of it, R. And if you go to that Raga Therapy app, it will ask you a series of 4 or 5 questions of how you feel and how you want to feel, and etc., etc. And if you mark your choices, then from the algorithm that is inbuilt, it will choose the right raga for you that matches your state, and I will sing that raga for you for about 15 minutes.
That is
And
so cool. We'll
yeah,
definitely have the links for that in the show notes of this podcast. And it's
right.
through the Sampurnam Healing website, sampurnamhealing.com
Well,
/
in
Raga. Or you can
Sampurnam,
find the app in the App Store as well. Hey.
you can find it in the App Store. If you want to read about it, you can read Sampurnam Healing, SAMPOORNAM healing.com. You will find, little notes about this app and how I came to it, etc. But just to tell you a very old story also, there was a emperor in India. His name was Akbar. He was a Mughal emperor, roughly in, you can say, 1500 or something like that. And he was a great connoisseur of the arts. And in his darbar, in his court, was a very famous composer called Tansen, who was almost like the Beethoven of India, you can say like that, And once it seems that Akbar had a lot of problems with his country, and it felt all very hopeless, and it was desperate for him. Things were not working out, and he came back very, very depressed and tired, and he called the composer Tansen, and he said, can you compose me something that can relieve me? And Tansen composed the melody called Darbari. Darbar means court, but he just gave the name Darbari. And when we did the proving of Darbari now, when we tested it out, you will be very surprised to know that the predominant experience of the testers or the provers was of great depression and hopelessness and heaviness. In homeopathy, we would link it to the remedy called aurum metallicum or gold. And that's what came out. So Tansen was a homeopath too. It was unbelievable that
well,
Buddha and Tansen and who knows who else,
Most people are a homeopath, because I've never done this, but I've heard that if you have a very bad hangover, then apparently if you start drinking again, that helps your hangover. I've heard that. I've never tried it, but anyone who's ever done that is also a homeopath. So homeopathy is everywhere.
It's everywhere. It is. I also found that homeopathy is also a part of, the world of art and painting, and the world of movies and stories and novels, and even humor. My next book is about humor, where I'm going to tell certain jokes from my own life, and I'm going to write an analysis of these jokes as to what is it that this joke mirrors in you that makes you laugh and heal. That's why they say laughter is the best medicine, because it has to be homeopathic. It has to bring some awareness.
Yeah.
Each jokes in a funny way makes you aware of something in you. Otherwise, it cannot provoke laughter.
That's
by laughing with yourself, you mirror. So I think humor is homeopathy too. And everything is homeopathy. In fact, when you read the news, when you see, violence, when you see what is happening, for example, today, in the world, in Ukraine or whatever, what does it do to you? Forget what's happening in Ukraine, but when you read that, what happens to you? What do you relate with? what experience do you get when you turn your attention inwards and not, not always what's happening there and what is this and what is this and what is that, but when you see something, when you or in a crisis in your own life, when you have a discord with, your partner or whoever, if you turn the mirror inside and see what does it do to you, then you throw light on your own internal pattern and which rules your life, and each one, it will be so different. If you talk to 10 people about Ukraine, you'll get 10 completely different viewpoints because each one comes from himself. So if you become aware of that, every opportunity in your life, every crisis, every news, every art, every movie, every joke becomes your homeopathic remedy.
Well, maybe you've just given us a segue into the next part, from shadow to light.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that as well, and your the wise therapy? And you talked about, I actually called my staff. I said, you have to come and watch this, the part where you showed people the photo of Mount Everest and how it invoked all these, nobody is the same. Can you maybe talk to us a little bit about that? Because I know we're running short of time, but I would love for you to tell our listeners about your next level of work that you're going into, if we have time for that.
Well, this is going on for quite some time already. Wise is a short form for witnessing inner song experience, which basically means you witness the pattern which is inside of you, which is an experience. It's not an emotion, it's not a thought, it's an experience, a bodily and emotional experience. And we found a kind of a shortcut to facilitate people to witness this, and that is certain processes, which is called wise processes, that I originated. The most simple one I can tell our listeners today is to take just a blank piece of paper and a pen and doodle something without thinking, without reasoning, without logic. Just scratch something, just make a pattern there, without any logic, and as quickly as you can. And then just take your time and just look at it. Keep looking at what is there, and without interpreting it and without classifying it or without trying to even understand it, just use it as a kind of a tool to look within you. What experience does it produce inside you, which may be totally unconnected with what you have done there? It's not about that, it's about you. This will act as a catalyst to stimulate your consciousness or awareness of your own pattern. That's a very simple wise process, you can say, like that, but we have devised many like that. And I wrote a book called From Shadow to Light on how to use these wise processes to look within and also to locate your own homeopathic remedy or that of your client.
Oh, amazing. And you're a very funny man, Rajan. If homeopathy ever doesn't work out for you, which, it sounds like it's going pretty well for you, so you might not want to change careers. But if you ever do decide homeopathy is not for you anymore, you should become a stand-up comedian, because you are a very funny man. The way that you described a doodle, you said it's something like the closest thing you can do without being institutionalized, and then right. Where in the video you were saying about what a doodle would sound like, you're going to have to tell our listeners a little bit about that.
Yeah, basically, why I started with a doodle is because in the world of, adults, you cannot do anything that is irrational. Then you are considered a little crazy, isn't it? Suppose I'm just sitting and talking and I go, I think you won't do any podcast with me anymore. You'll probably send me to a psychiatrist. So we are not allowed in some sense to do so. We suppress it, But children can do, children can bark and children can roll, and we say, wow, look at this beautiful child, what funny things.
Expressing himself.
Right? So doodle is the one thing that we do unconsciously, when we are talking to somebody or there's a boring lecture and then we make a pattern. It has no sense at all. So, in fact, it looks like the doodle is the only irrational thing we are even allowed to do, without getting institutionalized.
And
Yeah.
totally uninhibited. Hey, like a doodle doesn't have a reason behind it. It's completely
Yeah.
uninhibited.
Yeah. So, if we do more things like that, I think that we will become more and more aware of what's going on inside. So I do retreats in India, 5-day retreats, and I take my patients and my colleagues there. We are like 20, 30 of us in a very, very beautiful nature place. And for 5 days, we just do all these things. We do wise
Wow.
processes, we do meditations, we do music, we do rhythm, we do, connection with nature, we do vegan diet, we do, all, and 5 days, and we are off the telephone totally. We are not allowed. And it's a very deeply healing experience for them and for me as well.
Do you do this at the Sampurnam Healing Center, or is this done
Correct.
somewhere?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, I'll make sure
We
I
do
connect
that.
that,
Yes,
link that in the notes.
our next retreat is in the early week of September. Yes, and the other thing that I do is these wise processes. We have done two very big wise webinars. One in Germany, which involved 750 people, and in Brazil, which involved 400 people. And we did 8 weeks of that, like every week for 8 weeks we did a different wise process, and the results have been quite significant. So we did statistical survey of the people before and after, and we found that their quality of life across various parameters had improved very significantly in statistical terms. So
That
that's
sounds
what we
amazing.
did in Germany and Brazil. We did eight wise webinars in a series, 1, 2, 3, 4 till 8, every week for 8 weeks. And what we also did, we had special, techniques of partnering people with each other, and it's amazing and these webinars, if people want to view them or whatever, are available. They are all online available. The German ones, at least, which are also in English. They are bilingual on a website.
I can put it all in the show notes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I know that we're running out of time, but I'm wondering, is there maybe a last message that you want to leave our listeners with? Firstly, about how they can get hold of your work. I mean, anyone can really just Google your name and it'll be the very first thing that will come up. But maybe, is there any last message that you want to leave our listeners with?
You see, if they want to get hold of my work, there are many possibilities. One is, as you said rightly, there are a lot of YouTube videos of mine. There are probably more than 250 YouTube videos, and they are all for free. And they are on meditation, they are on music, they are on homeopathy. So this is something that is easily accessible. Secondly, the book that I wrote now, Manjhi the Boatman, is available on Amazon, etc., etc. So it's easy to get. Thirdly, for people who are interested in my homeopathic work or the wise processes, there are books on that. One is The Shadow to Light, which I wrote just now. And I wrote about 25 books now, and on all aspects of my evolution. So that is available on my website, onlinehmp.com.
I've got about 5 of them behind me, so I've still got 20 more to go. 20 books.
Right. And recently, we have just launched something called the Sankaran Master Class for homeopaths who want to follow me from the beginning till this current level. We have a 5-module master class where I will be guiding students, mentoring them in a way personally. There's online content, mentoring online content, like that. So that is something I would highly, highly recommend, because if you follow one teacher from the beginning till the end, and my method is very comprehensive. It's not just about it's sensation or
it's an
something.
Evolution.
It's a comprehensive. I use repertory, materia medica, everything in sync, in synergistic way. So this course is very good. So there are a lot of possibilities to follow me. I'm quite spread out, you say, ubiquitous, you can say.
Oh, Rajan, it was just so magical. There was one little, I don't, if it's a short answer, you can answer it. If it's a long one, not. But the son of your brother from another mother, Misha Nolan, his son, Luke, said to ask you how old you were when your father got you to repertorize your first case.
Well, I think I'm probably about 12 or 13 years old when because those times there was no software, all that had to be done manually. So he would bring cases and he would say, just take these rubrics and find the remedy, etc. So I had to do that work for him. So I sometimes joke and I say, luckily child labor laws were not so strict in those times. Otherwise, I could have got him arrested, the way he...
Well, it definitely paid off in the end by the sounds of it.
Yeah. So ultimately, I became a professor of repertory and I held that position for 30 years,
Professor of repertory at age 14.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Rajan. I hope you have a beautiful day, and thank you so much for sharing all this knowledge with us.
Thank you, Eugene. And yeah, it was nice. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
The Homeopathy Hangout podcast is produced by Eugenie Kruger Homeopathy. For more information, visit eugeniekruger.com. The information presented in this podcast is for educational purposes only and does not replace advice from your medical practitioner. Please read our full disclaimer in the show notes. Thank you for listening.